podcasting from Astrolab Studios. This is Continuum Drag, a weekly podcast where we revisit sci-fi, fantasy, and just plain weird shows that have faded from the collective consciousness and didn't quite make the impact that they intended. This week, the finale of Tekwar, episode 18.
I want Lambert stopped.
First, put your own house in order.
That's why I hired you.
I believe I know how Lambert located Singh.
Give it to me straight.
Cardigan asked Nika for Singh's location yesterday, and now he's dead. I think it's more than a coincidence.
You can't be serious.
Cardigan's been on the scene of every bust that's gone wrong, including the one at Lambert's warehouse. Somebody at Cosmos is working for Lambert, and his name is Jake Cardigan.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Continuum Drag. Glad you can join us for this final episode on Tekwar.
Yeah, it feels like it's been a long time that we've a long time coming. Anyway,
Could have been longer.
it could have been longer.
So what we're going to do, we'll obviously get into the final episode and sort of talk about how the series wraps up. Before we do, there's a few segments we never got to, a few things we wanted to talk about. So we're gonna start with that. Jordan, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I think I can't remember what episode we talked about it on, but we had discussed some of the later careers of some of the writers and directors. I think it was the second or third episode we talked about it. So I thought we'd do a quick look at what some of the main actors had been or have been doing, since Tekwar went off the air. So I'll go through a couple of them. We'll start with Jake. Jake was played by Greg Evigan. He has done a lot since then. I think his probably most famous thing was he did a pretty long stint on Melrose Place.
Oh, really?
I did at one point write down what he was. He was a doctor or something. I don't know.
I never watched it. I was
I
usually
never-
watching nerd stuff.
No, I didn't watch it either. I just remember the commercials for it. It always seemed like someone was slapping someone. And he also did a long stint on General Hospital a few years ago.
Oh, that sounds like a pretty good gig for an actor.
I know, right? And then actually right now he's on a series called Abbott Falls. Also, he's gotten older. Who would have thought? 25 years.
Who could imagine?
Who could imagine? So that was basically, that's old Greg. Houston was played by Maria Del Mar, and she pretty much was on every single Canadian show or movie you've ever seen. She's been on it in the last 20 years. For years and years, which I don't know, she was apparently on Street Legal, the Canadian cop show.
We'll watch the season where they got into UFOs.
Is that really?
I know it's not real.
No. My knowledge of Street Legals could not be less, I think. Sid was played by Eugene Clark. Again, very similar career to Maria Del Mar. He worked on a lot of Canadian things like Sue Thomas FBI, which let me make one note about Sue Thomas FBI. For anyone who doesn't know what that show is, it's a very lighthearted, investigative, detective show where it's a female detective named Sue Thomas. And why it's called FBI is because she's deaf. But I always thought that doesn't make any sense because that only makes sense as a title if she's blind. Shouldn't it be FB Ear? Isn't that a better title?
Doesn't she use her eyes to solve the crimes because she's deaf?
Yeah, but not any more than I think any other detective. Right? FB Ear. Much funnier. Moving on is Beth was played by Tori Higginson.
Sorry, I'm looking forward to cutting that.
Beth played by Tori Higginson, and I think we mentioned this way back when, that she's by far the most popular actor, obviously aside from Shatner, the most popular actor that has been on the show, at least because she was on both Stargate shows.
Oh, we jumped past Sid, didn't we?
No, I mentioned him.
No, yeah.
He was on Sue Thomas FB Ear.
That's where we got caught up in that. But he was actually in one of George Romero's zombie films.
Oh, was he?
His fourth one,
I think Something of the Dead.
Land of the Dead.
Ah.
He's the lead zombie in that, and that character is the best character in the movie.
Oh, I never saw it.
It's really, it's actually not a great film, but it's pretty good, and he actually is a very cool character in it because he's a zombie who's starting to organize the zombies. But yeah, that was Sid. I'm like, oh, that's very cool. That was I like that role.
Nika was played by Natalie Radford. Worked pretty steady. Her latest credits are Deadly Voltage and Darcy's Wildlife.
Oh, both sound good, but very different.
And
what do you
finally,
think Deadly Voltage is about?
I'm hoping it's about just just electricity that's too much to handle.
It's like an electricity man comes to life.
Yeah. Yeah, something like that.
Nice.
And finally, Winger, played by Maurice Dean Wint. And I have to say, of all the things I looked at, I was most excited about him because he wasn't in one, but he was in two separate RoboCop series. He just happened
played
to be,
a robot like he did here? Is he typecast?
I don't know if it was a robot.
Typecast as a robot?
I think he's just typecast as someone who will do movies. Also, before he was on Tekwar, he was in Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future. Remember that?
No.
It's a TV show where it was the first TV show. Maybe someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was the first TV show with CGI.
Oh.
Not good CGI. And also it was supposed to be interactive with people watching it. So if you had this particular gun as a kid, you could shoot the screen and like get like sort of like a duck hunt type thing.
Oh yeah.
Anyways, it was probably, I would guess it went off the air in about like 87 or so.
I didn't have cable, so I missed all of these things.
Sorry. Anyways, that's pretty much it. So as unremarkable a segment it is, it's really just reflecting the unremarkable careers of the cast. But they're all working, so you can't like slag them. They all worked, like pretty much all of them are all still working. I mean, I've never done anything anyone's ever heard of, right? So
Not even this.
not even yeah, there you go. So who am I? Nobody.
Great. Well, thanks, Jordan. That's some interesting information about all the people we've come to know and love on the series.
Yeah, we didn't really love them, but you know.
Okay, so since we're walking away after this episode from Tekwar, at least until someone yells at us on the internet and we come back because we're
No one will
weak-willed
ever be
people.
upset that we're not talking about Tekwar anymore.
There were only 5 episodes we didn't watch.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give you the titles and we'll go back and forth and try to figure out what we think that episode was about.
Sure, okay.
I'll go first here. Zero Tolerance. I think that is about the accounting department coming after Jake for all his expenses.
It's
and
funny.
it's just like zero tolerance about it.
It's funny. I was going to say the exact same thing. It's about Jake breaking the rules and complaining about it because that's what he does.
All right. The next episode we didn't watch, Forget Me Not. I say Beth comes back for sure in that episode.
I don't think so. I think Carlotta comes back. She comes back for her revenge.
Her ghost comes back.
Yeah, her ghost comes back. You get to finally see that brain in a jar. And Jake feels bad because he's clearly already moved on.
Yeah, well, it starts off with him on another date with Houston.
Yeah. And she's like, not again.
The next episode we didn't watch, The Gate.
It's about Jake finally getting the fence that he's always wanted to put up at his home, and he gets a gate, but the gate ends up being hooked up by someone who works for Tech Lord, and it electrocutes and kills Jake, and then he ends up going into an electric heaven, and he has to fight his way out by
As Deadly Voltage?
As Deadly Voltage, yeah.
That's what that movie's called, right?
Yeah, Deadly Voltage.
Nice.
What do you think?
No, I'm good with that. That sounds great.
Yeah, that did sound great, didn't it?
I mean, I'm not going to come.
There's no holes there.
I'm not going to come back on that. All right, next up, Skin Deep.
It's based on one of Jake's pickup lines that he uses all the time, and it's about him hitting the dating scene and finding that he may be getting a little too old for the go around.
I will agree, but I think Jake, to get over it, he goes to some of those tissue tuggers and
Oh yeah, tissue tuggers.
gets
That's good.
his tissues tugged until he is more attractive. I don't know. Maybe that's what happens in that.
Yeah,
episode?
he looks like one of those. Remember that bad Star Trek movie where the whole race for some reason were always just pulling their face.
Oh yeah,
They had F. Murray Abraham pulling.
Poor F. Murray Abraham.
Yeah, trying to act through that.
And the final episode we didn't watch, Redemption.
Oh, you know what'd be great? Sid comes back and finally gets to fight with that weird portal where he threw the fan into it and it fell and hurt his ankle. He finally gets to go and defeat it and get the revenge that he couldn't in his life, and then he becomes a ghost again.
He's also, oh no, I see. He comes back. He's the zombie
Yeah.
from Land of the Dead. He
Yeah.
comes back and fights the thing.
Yeah.
Gets his redemption, and then he also becomes a ghost or brain in the jar like Carlotta.
Yeah.
in
Yeah. Well,
Forget
no,
Me
he's
Not.
more like Obi-Wan Kenobi. He sort of is a spirit that guides.
Oh, Force Ghost.
Yeah. Force Ghost. Yeah. Is that what they call them? Force
I
Ghost?
think so. I think that's what they're called, Force Ghosts.
Yeah. He becomes a Force Ghost.
Write it and tell us.
Yeah. No, don't do that.
Those are the 5 episodes we missed. We'll never know if we were right or wrong.
You know what? The thing is, we'll never know because every time I watch these episodes, I kind of would guess where things were going to go, and they would never go where I thought because they're just whatever you think makes sense. They're not going to do that, but never in an interesting way.
They're never the most obvious answers.
No,
but they're also never answers.
Yeah, it's like they're going to start in one place and have a bunch of things happen that don't mean anything, and then they'll go back to the place they started, and they'll have a fight, and then Jake will make some sort of witty line, and then the credits will roll. That's basically.
I mean, essentially. All right, Jordan. I wanted to look at kind of like the highlights and the lowlights of the series so far. Specifically, I'm going to start off by calling out our 2 highest rated episodes. Do you remember what our 2 highest rated episodes were?
I'm gonna guess our 2 highest rated episodes were, I think the first one, I bet, Tech Posse.
You're mostly correct. Tech Posse is my highest rated episode from the entire series.
It was our average, or is each one?
No, each individually.
Oh, I already know what mine is. Mine was Carlotta's,
And I was Tekwar.
and I Tech Posse.
Tech Posse.
I feel more remorse about my score on that than most things in my life.
Yeah.
We talked about it afterwards, and
There was no other episode you gave 7.5 to.
I know. I don't know what something about it touched me, and I know it's not good, and I shouldn't have given it a high score, and I regret it, but I can't go back now. I can't.
A Tech Posse makes sense to me. I'm like, yeah, that probably was the best episode. Carlotta's Room.
I know.
I gave it
you get it
one
too.
of my lowest ratings, so
Yeah.
I'm still in shock that you loved it so much.
Yeah.
On the low end, it's a tie for you. Both of us have a tie for lowest scores.
Oh, yeah?
Because we gave a lot of episodes the lowest scores. Your low score was 5. That's the lowest you gave an episode of Tech War.
Right. I was
How
pretty
many
nice.
episodes do you think you gave a 5 to?
Probably 3.
You gave a 5 to 5 episodes of
Did I
Tech War.
really? To be fair, that's about what this show is. It's about a 5 out of 10. I stand by all those.
My lowest score was a 2, which I split amongst 3 different episodes.
Yeah, I know Carlotta's Room.
Obviously, Cyber Hunt and Promises to Keep. So
Which one's Cyber Hunt?
It was the last one we watched.
Oh, yeah, that was bad.
Yeah.
And I gave it a 5?
5.
Yeah.
5 is the lowest you'll go for anything. It's interesting. I was wondering if I was rating too harshly, but I think you're rating a lot
I'm being too
more
forgiving.
lenient. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if as we go forward to these next episodes, I might rethink my rating strategy because I'm just like
I do have a spoiled cat, so I might just be too lenient with everything. She wants a treat, she gets a treat.
I'm gonna revisit my own personal rating system as we go forward and kind of feel out what's gonna happen.
You know what I
going
think
forward.
for me was, I think I was always scared to go too high or too low because what things would be later on. Do you know what I mean? Like if 5 is a 5, then another show, and maybe I
Yeah, you got to save those high ratings for those Carlotta's Rooms when they come along.
yeah, I know it doesn't really add up, but yeah, I said I regretted it.
I'll never forgive you.
I'd at least give it a 6 now.
Well, we're not going back, so
We're not going back.
it stays what it is.
Once you're in the escape pod,
Once those ratings are put in stone, that's where they stay.
yeah.
So here are some other. I was just kind of like trying to think of what some of my personal highlights from the show were because it wasn't a great show.
No, it was not.
But I was thinking back, and I can say that the things I looked forward to most in this show, and it obviously changed as the season moved on. But at first it was Sid, and then after Sid died and Winger started becoming more of a character, I was very excited to see Winger on screen.
But they didn't develop him at all past that one episode.
I will admit, I wonder if them being a highlight for me is because they never got developed, so I didn't have to worry about them being ruined. They kind of were all potential and no disaster.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's that many highs on this show.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess my the one low light, I was trying to think of what was the biggest letdown of the show. I came into this thinking I would get a lot more Shatner, and there was just no Shatner in it.
There's a surprising lack of him, except, spoiler for episode 18. He's all over episode 18.
Yeah,
Now, I don't know if he was in any of those others, but yeah, he was gone after episode 2 or 3? Like, he just was gone.
I would bet that he was in the episode 17 as well, that they brought him in for like a block of 2, like they did at the start of the series. Kind of 2 episodes at the top, 2 episodes at the end. That was like kind of what was agreed to. And he directed the first episode, he directed the last episode. But I really expected to get a lot more Shatner out of the show.
Did he direct the last episode?
He did?
Oh, because I was going to say again, we're going to talk about it when we get to it, but it was the worst directed episode of any of the Tech War we've seen so far. It was, I would say, almost unwatchable. I think it might have been, and I know we've already taken the escape pod, my least favorite episode. I hated it so much. I hated the episode.
Well, I'll save my opinions for later, but I'm going to say the best scene of the entire series is in this episode.
Is it? I have to think what that is.
This is something you wanted to talk about. Best Tech Lord.
Oh, yeah. Who? So I know who. Weirdly, I think the Tech Lord I liked the most was Marty Dollar. I don't even know if he was actually a Tech Lord.
No, he was a Tech Lord.
I liked Marty Dollar. I thought there was actually kind of something interesting there. But like it was over. That was episode 1 because they were all just sort of interchangeable. You never learned anything interesting about these people. You could change their name. It didn't really matter. I thought Rossi could have been interesting for a character they had on 2 episodes. You didn't learn anything about him. You didn't learn what his motivations were other than I guess he likes money and prostitutes. But yeah, I would say Marty Dollar. What about yourself?
Oh, it'd be Janice.
Which one's Janice?
He was from Tech Posse. He's the holographic wizard who pops up.
Oh, that was pretty good.
He was the most enjoyable to me.
I still think I like Marty Dollar. He looked like a 1990s wrestler.
Marty Dollar had the most screen time of all the Tech Lords, and he seemed to chew the scenery the most. I would definitely put him at number 2.
All right.
If I had to choose. Did you have any other thoughts on highlights or lowlights?
My highlight would be that one robot whose face turned to spaghetti.
Oh, that was great.
That was good. I like when that guy died, that one Tech Lord died and stuck his tongue out. That was funny. I think I might just be picking funny moments. Again, I think there could have been a great moment after Jake was holding, we won't keep going on about Carlotta's room, but when he was holding her hand, that could have been an amazing end to an episode and would have maybe garnered a 7.5 or so. Honestly, there weren't that many great moments. It kind of just was, there was an unintentionally funny moment here and there, or a cool idea that just wasn't developed. There was almost no world building at all in this show. Nothing quite made sense or seemed to be consistent from episode to episode. And lowlights, I hated the character Jake so much. I hated he was the star of the show. And I feel bad for the actor. I'm sure he did whatever he could. I was like, I'm so uninterested in this paint by the numbers, 2-dimensional character who is not even an interesting vehicle into this world. I hate him.
Fair enough. Not a runaway success as far as a lead character goes.
Yeah. I think he got a haircut in the last episode. Did you notice that? I
was going to bring that up. I also think he got a haircut. I think they gave him a little bit of a makeover in this last episode. I actually think the actor himself did better work than a lot of people would have with the character.
That's what I mean. I don't think he's bad at all. I just think the character is terrible.
Absolutely agree. He didn't have a lot to work with, but I actually thought he found some humanity for Jake.
Do you?
I mean, it was tough, I think, to do, but I didn't find him as obnoxious as I feel like he probably read on the page.
Yeah, I still found him pretty obnoxious. You know?
All right.
There we are.
All right. Yeah. Speaking of highlights and lowlights, let's quickly talk about the podcast itself for a second.
Okay.
We're at the kind of end of our first cycle of episodes. We're finishing up Tekwar. The end of the last episode, you were very disappointed that we were getting in that escape pod.
I know, and after off the air, like a counseling session, we talked about it a little bit more too. You know what it was, and this is gonna sound like I'm being a little bit flippant, but it was watching Tekwar was like being in an abusive relationship, and I kept making excuses for it. Like, yeah, I know Tekwar hits me every now and then, but you don't understand it like I do, you know. And somewhere along the line, I started like, for better or worse, started wanting to watch Tekwar, even though I wasn't enjoying it. It became my routine of watching these episodes and then talking about them. And so then it was like, oh, it's over. Even though it's a good thing it's over. And I don't want to watch this show anymore. Like even watching episode 18, I was like, ugh, I got to do this again. But there was a weird sense of finality that I think I hadn't emotionally prepared myself for. But I'm fine with it. I'm quite happy we're done with Tekwar. I really don't want to watch anymore.
All right. Do you want to get into the finale?
I can't wait to get into the last episode.
Tekwar, episode 18, Betrayal. Jake is trying to monitor an illegal weapon shipment, but someone has tipped off the Tech Lord. A spy is suspected in the Cosmos agency. After investigating, Boscom and others believe Jake is the leak. Someone is out to get Jake.
Yeah, this episode's terrible. It's really, really bad. And what a way to end a series. Like, I mean, maybe they didn't know they were going to end the series, but this episode is a real stinker.
I will say, though, it is a real family affair. William Shatner directing.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Elizabeth Shatner writing. Mm-hmm. And Melanie Shatner starring.
Oh, who is that?
Oh, you didn't catch
No,
Melanie
I didn't.
Shatner?
No, I always skip through the
Two
credits.
daughters, one writing, one starring,
Who was she?
William directing.
I'm trying to remember now.
I'll tell you when we get to her. and
Okay.
You can be surprised.
Oh, is that why this episode is so bad? It's I'm gonna say we'll go through it. This episode feels like, one, they didn't get all the scenes they needed, and two, the people working on it may have been blind. Like nothing works. The camera's in the wrong spot, and people are giving dialogue, and it doesn't seem like they know where the camera is. It's so bad.
All right, let me start us off. Jake and Houston are on a stakeout. They've received a tip, presumably an anonymous tip, since that's how they work.
Yeah.
And they're there to stop arms dealer Lambert from, I guess, selling arms at this warehouse.
And Houston's in a bad mood. She's making fun of how bad Jake's jokes are.
Yeah,
But maybe, to be fair, she's probably been stuck in a car with him for 12 hours.
it looks very cold outside where they are. Like, even the actors look very cold.
But isn't it weird, though? They're on a stakeout, right? Why don't they just be in a car?
Yeah, I don't know.
They're just standing outside by the car.
They follow a guy into a warehouse, and this is to be the best location they've ever found for this show.
Oh yeah, I have to say this was the one saving grace in this show is I know what you're saying, this is the big dinosaurs.
It is a warehouse full of like giant cartoon animals and animatronic dinosaurs, and they're all just huge statues everywhere.
And they don't fit with the show at all.
No, it
looks like they rated a children's TV show and go, oh yeah, we'll use these as props.
Well, it does look like locations found a warehouse where someone was storing floats or something. I don't understand how they came across this place. Jake and Houston try to break up the arms deal or whatever's going on, but it turns out Lambert's a hologram and he's expecting them. And so they get in a shootout with the henchman who's there, which is crazy because they start blowing up. Like there's an animatronic dinosaur that's like turning its head that looks very expensive. And they like are blowing it up with pyrotechnics. They're like blowing up all these very expensive looking props.
Yeah. Also, Jake uses his wave gun, and do you notice it blows something up? I'm like, he's never done that with a wave gun before. It just knocked people over.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. It's kind of the best fight sequence they've ever had, just because it's the weirdest location, and like they really are using a lot of pyrotechnics in it. They're like destroying all this stuff. I mean, maybe I don't know where they found this place or what was going out of business. They were like a Chuck E. Cheese went out of business, and they were just allowed to blow up all of their props.
Don't you think it was a kind of a disappointing scene though? Like it seemed like something out of the Silver Age of comics, of these larger than life props that they're fighting on. You know, like Batman's fighting Joker on a gigantic typewriter set, and they keep hitting keys as they fight, that sort of thing. And that's what I thought this scene was going to be like with these animatronic things, but it wasn't. They just kept cutting them to incredibly weird camera angles that were disorienting.
They only had 2 hours to shoot that. They didn't have time to think anything through.
Right.
At any rate, during this shootout, Jake suddenly has this vision or this like waking nightmare where this man appears to him, and he like... This is, I guess, the setup for the episode is Jake is suffering from these like hallucinations, these waking hallucinations.
Which look just like a hologram.
Yeah, well, that's it. In a world full of holograms, it's tough to know when we're supposed to understand Jake is suffering a mental break. But yes, a man like shifts into gear, Lambert's escaped, and we come back to Cosmo and we learn kind of what's going on. And that is Bascom has a personal vendetta against Lambert, and so they're on this case to get this like weapons dealer. And
he's hounding this particular tech lord because he has a personal vendetta against him.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna get into it now, like what the deal between Bascom and Lambert is. It's played out over the episode, but it doesn't really matter. I think my favorite part though is later in the episode, Houston asks straight out, "It's like, what's with you and Lambert?" And Bascom's like, "That's my business." So she says, "I thought it was Cosmo business," and Bascom says, "There's no difference." It's the first time we've explicitly said this is just a place for Bascom to run down his personal vendettas against people. He can have all these higher ideas. Bascom is really just like some like rich man just running the security company.
And that's the thing though, but like, haven't they realized that at this point? Because I mean, look, we can get into this. He brings in this bureaucratic guy, who by the way should be played by Lance Reddick. But anyways, he brings in this guy who's basically, for all intents and purposes, he's an efficiency manager who's there to try to catch leaks. He's all going about how things need approval and you need to get, do the things in the proper order, like a way an office is supposed to work. I love that the thread through this entire series is how much they hate bureaucracy and doing things the proper way. And it's like, but that's how the world works. When the light says green, you go, and when it's red, you stop. If you start screwing around, that's how things go wrong.
It turns out Lambert goes back to the old Brazil War
Yeah, right.
He was a protege of Bascom's until was confusing to me a little bit, but Lambert killed 100 prisoners, stole their weapons, which I'm like, why kill them? They're already prisoners and you already have you don't need to kill them to take their weapons.
He's evil.
And then he just becomes a gun runner to tech lords.
But I like that he's my protege, and he really slipped up. Like, could you imagine just like you're training someone, you're an accountant, and you're training someone, you're like, oh, my last assistant, oh, they weren't very good. Like, oh, what happened? They killed 100 people and stole a bunch of nuclear missiles. They really screwed up.
Yeah, it does.
It's like, whoa, that is like, how did he even get that opportunity?
He broke bad pretty hard.
Yeah, exactly.
At any rate, Bascom apparently got blamed by the military, and he had to go find evidence to prove his innocence, which brings up an interesting point. Is from this story, it's apparent that Lambert was arrested and put in the freezer at some point.
Was he in the freezer
they
already?
They explicitly say it, and this will come up later, but they explicitly say it because he's going to the same psychiatrist for freezer burn that Jake is going to. Okay, so he killed 100 people, started running guns, but you caught him. And granted, the Brazil War was what, 30 years ago?
No, it can't be that
15.
long ago, because the what's her face was in the Brazil War, right?
Oh, right. So like 15 years ago.
I bet even less.
Like, how long was his sentence?
What was the girl's name who when Jake pulled her out of the freezer, the Russian episode? She was in for like 100 years, wasn't she?
Yeah, she got 100 years for killing 8 people. I just was like, okay.
Hold on, let me stop you. Are you saying that Tekwar has inconsistencies from episode to episode and that no one has thought out anything?
I know that hasn't been your experience so far.
It's not been my experience with Tekwar. They've been pretty shipshape.
At any rate, that is kind of the backstory between Bascom and Lambert and why Bascom wants to get him. You brought this up already, but Cosmo is currently on lockdown because there's a mole in the organization. Information is leaking out, and they've brought in, you called him an efficiency expert, but they introduce him. They've hired a security company, and I'm like, Cosmos is a security company.
I know. But it is funny because they've hired a security person to take care of a security company.
But I guess it makes sense. They're trying to like shut down leaks, trying to figure out what's going on. And like, you're right, stop this stuff. Jake actually says how much he hates red tape, and this guy is basically making Jake fill out requisition forms, and Jake hates it. This is a small thing, but when Jake goes to complain about this efficiency expert, his name's Slater. Mm-hmm. He walks in on Shatner, and Shatner's drinking water out of 2 giant goblets.
It looked like he was drinking out of like they just pulled flowers out of a vase. It was hilarious.
He had 2 huge glass goblets. It has nothing to do with anything, but I was just like, that is some great prop work.
Oh no, but the thing with what was the guy's name?
Slater.
They sort of complain about him coming and having to create all these efficiencies and stuff. But with the exception of Nika saying, "I need to get approval before I'll do a search for you," which is a little bit odd, but you never actually ever see any. You never see any of these efficiencies in place. Not that that makes terribly interesting TV, but it's always funny to hear characters talk about something other than show it. They're talking about how difficult things are and how things have changed, but you don't see anything different. Jake still never actually goes to his desk or does any work. So I don't know what he's complaining about. Nothing's changed for him.
No, it really doesn't change for him at all because he hates red tape.
Yeah.
We jump from this scene to Jake at the gym with...
Yeah, that little loser, Danny.
Danny's back. And there's not much going on here. Basically, Jake tells Danny about the nightmares he's having, and he's seeing this prison therapist who's helping him with his freezer burn problems, but he doesn't want people to know. There's one interesting piece of like relationship info between Jake and Danny.
What is it?
I don't know if you noticed this, but Jake's pretty haggard in this episode. Like, he's not sleeping well. He has these nightmares. They're on these treadmills, and Jake gets really upset when he kind of sees Danny's keeping up with him. So Jake turns up the speed on his, and he gets very, very competitive with Danny. Like, he turns the speed on his treadmill, starts running, and then he beats Danny. Like, he jumps off. He's like, I beat you. And that's just like when they played that video game and they went head to head. Jake didn't like take it easy or like have fun with his son. He hunted his son down and like beat him as quickly as possible. Jake has this real fear of his son being better than him, I think.
I think you've given that much more thought than the writers ever did. But I don't think you're wrong, but I think it's maybe an accident in terms of the character.
It was so weird. I'm just like, why are you so like you're going to turn your treadmill up to maximum speed like a 13-year-old just to prove that you're
a jerk.
Better than your son?
I think we've learned he's a jerk. Oh, can I say one funny thing? I don't know if you noticed it in this scene, but they're in a very weird looking gym. Like, clearly there's not much props and stuff, but in the background there's a a window of some sorts where you can see silhouettes, and there's a guy lifting dumbbells in the background, and it's the funniest, like, terrible miming ever, just of someone who's never lifted anything before in the background. And it's just for a split second you can see it in the background, and it's like, I don't even know why that was needed to go like, oh, there's other people working in other gym private rooms.
Yeah, in the other private rooms.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty funny. That's some
go back and check it out.
good set design. This is where we jump forward to meeting Dr. Blake, who is Jake's psychologist, and also Melanie Shatner.
Oh, that's Melanie Shatner.
Yes.
Oh, that makes sense. These were some real Soprano scenes here with going to the psychiatrist.
She lists off the problems he has. He suffers from freezer burn, tech trauma, and memory transfer.
Oh, is that what it was? Really?
I know about the freezer burn, and the tech trauma makes sense because he used to be a tech addict.
Yeah.
Did we miss his memory getting transferred at some point?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I think there's as good a chance that we missed an episode that has that, or it's just something the writer threw in that sounded
didn't
good.
happen. I mean, that's kind of the funny part about this is later we'll find out in this episode his memories are being stolen and tampered with. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, is he just referring to the thing that's currently happening to him in this episode?
Oh, that is funny. She's given him a little hint that what she's doing.
Wink, wink. Yeah, essentially we'll find out she's working for Lambert and has turned Jake into a mole.
Well, he gets to say to her at one point, he goes, "You're beautiful and persuasive. What a combo." And what I wrote was, I'm so glad to not have to hear him and his cheesy pickup lines anymore. So at this point, she does his therapy with him, and I goes to, I'm guessing this is your favorite part of the episode, where he goes into the dream and he does his little run in the dream. It was my favorite part of the episode.
Well, I love it. He gets in like a dentist chair with like this like light halo above it.
Yeah, it just looks like like a hairdryer from the 1960s.
And she's got another one of these just like handheld controllers they never show you. And did you see how she turned on the machine?
No, I know it looked like he was holding Hulk hands.
She took the, I guess, computer in her hand and she just like tapped it against the side of a metal bar.
Oh, really?
And they're like, oh, I guess that's how it turns it on. Oh. But yeah, they go into his mind, which is like TV static.
And he runs on
the spot through like a crowd of people who you can't quite make out.
It looks again, and this show is being guilty of this a few times, that they do something that looks like they're taking a satirical poke at other TV shows, but they're not. It looks so cheesy and so dumb. You think there's no way everyone involved didn't think this was funny, but there we are, Jake running on the spot and in Static Land.
Well, they only do this once when they go back to this nightmare world later, and it's only for a brief second, but he did some wire work too, where they hung him from wires. Do you
really?
Remember this?
No.
They only use it one time, and it never goes anywhere because he immediately is now running on the spot again. But they cut to him clearly dangling from wires in the static space, and it looks very awkward and uncomfortable for him. So I'm sure that's why they only used it one time. But I'm like, this is... Someone had big ideas for what this inner space was going to look like, but they just couldn't quite execute.
Yeah, well, they couldn't not quite execute. They couldn't execute it at all. It was Shatner. You know the only thing he's good at executing? His wife.
Oh,
right?
I'm so sad. I looked into that some more. Now I'm not. Now I don't think it's as funny.
It's not as funny. Well, he was. You know what? Let's be fair. He was investigated and cleared. So
I read up a little bit. It sounds like it had more to do. I think the people who are blaming him for her death. It sounds like she had some substance abuse issues that Shatner didn't take seriously enough.
Oh, I see.
And then she died from her substance abuse issues. So he's not maybe guilty of holding her head under the water so much as he's being found guilty of perhaps not being the husband he should have been.
Right.
Which is a much sadder state
that
of
is
affairs.
Sad. Yeah. So what you're saying is we should stop joking about it.
Well, it's fine. This show's over.
Yeah. Just like that marriage.
Anyway, in this nightmare town, he sees this vision again, which I guess is supposed to be his worst fear. That's what she's saying he's trying to find. We'll find this out later. It doesn't matter. They hide it from us for so long, and then it doesn't end up meaning anything.
Well, let me ask you. The theory behind this is she tells him that he's having freezer burn issues and nightmares and stuff because he hasn't come to term with his biggest fear,
yes.
Right? But how does that work? So, and this is the spoiler. What they're doing is they want to then implant a fake fear that he has so that he'll do something.
That happens later. They don't have that plan going
I know,
yet.
but what... I don't know if I understand how that works at all for them.
He doesn't... I guess because they are using this chair, they can look at his memories so they can, like, steal secrets? But like his greatest fear, and they won't reveal this for a while, but the man who keeps appearing in his visions in the waking world is Jake's father.
Right.
Which is a weird, I mean, maybe they introduced him in the movies, but like it's a weird way to introduce his father in these weird flashes. He's never come up before. And yeah, I don't know. The plan doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense. I mean, that's
because like how many secrets could they be getting? Like Jake doesn't even do any work.
They seem to just
they're like we pulled another secret. It seems like he asked Nika to do a Google search for him. That's it.
Yeah. I maybe that's to get his email password.
Yeah. Right.
When he's not broadcasting it on the Matrix.
Yeah, that's right. No, nice callback.
Anyway, it kind of ends there. We get this brief glimpse that they're going to go meet some guy. I don't know why. I don't know who this guy is. Maybe he tipped them off, but he's already been killed. So the inference is that someone leaked this informant they have.
Right.
He's already been killed, which is when we get to the best scene of the episode.
Is this when the two of them have their...
Bascom and Slater are discussing...
It's so weird.
It's the best thing Shatner could have done. I loved it so much.
Do you understand what the intention was of this scene?
The scene itself is just Bascom and Slater having a conversation. Basically, Slater's found evidence that a Cosmo car was by a vid phone that called into Lambert to tell him to assassinate this guy. So he's just explaining the evidence and the likelihood that is probably Jake who did it. That's what Slater is explaining to Bascom.
Yeah.
The way Shatner has chosen to direct it, though, is the two men lock eyes and just talk at each other. Evidence is like in the background behind them on a screen. They'll never look at it. They'll reference it. They'll be like, look, there's a license plate. It was by a vid phone. And you'll see it in the background, but the two of them never look at the evidence. They just stare in each other's eyes. They just keep talking. It's the same conversation, but it'll go from one scene that'll be in a new location, still locking eye contact.
That was my point. Now, are they trying to imply that this conversation took so long they were having it in different rooms, or is it? I don't know what it was supposed to be.
It's his artistic license. It was really weird, but it was it's probably my favorite thing anyone's done on this show. It was the only time anyone ever tried to do something really crazy.
But it's insane. It's an insane, like it's so distracting as a directing choice and shot selection that I almost felt like nauseated watching it.
Oh, it was my favorite part. It was the only time a director's vision was seen in this show.
Oh, you know what? Can I say one thing? Just after this scene, there's a point where something happens, and I actually know what it happens at 17 minutes and 17 seconds.
Are you going to talk about the argument they have?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and do you notice that one weird shot during the argument?
I did. Jake is arguing with Slater immediately after that scene about being singled out for like having to like do his work properly. And Slater tells him, I don't like cops who break the rules. And so Jake, who can't win another human being over to save his life, basically grabs his handheld computer and just smashes it out of the ground, throwing a tantrum, at which point
they decide to cut to a couple who sort of have a reaction like something from like the Benny Hill show or something. Like it was like suddenly they cut to a Mentos commercial of these two people being like, oh, and I've never seen anything like it. I'm telling you, this was the weirdest episode I've ever seen, but for no good reasons. Just insane choices made.
That cutaway was amazing. Yeah. Jake smashes the computer, and then over the top of a cubicle, two people just pop their heads out and like eyes wide, like, what was that?
Like a comedic reaction. It's very weird.
Oh, that was an amazing cutaway. I also made notes of that because those two randos made me laugh so hard.
Yeah, I know. I'll put it on Instagram.
From here, basically, Jake is really upset, so he doesn't want to follow rules, and he talks Houston into basically going back to the bar where the guy was assassinated. Ultimately, the scene has almost no purpose, but there's a couple like things that I really enjoyed in the scene that I thought were pretty funny. Because he goes back, there's just this guy in a leisure suit at the bar, like this like kind of like low-level punk guy. Jake basically talks his way into the bar by promising the guy some credits, but then immediately gets like really rough with the guy.
Is this the guy with the bad toupee?
Yeah.
And it doesn't play into anything. I kept thinking like they're gonna hit him and his toupee is gonna fall off, but it's just a bad toupee.
It's just a weird outfit they have. Like the whole leisure suit is very odd, an odd look for him. But Jake starts roughing him up, and the guy offers him stolen tobacco from old Cuba.
I know.
So now we know there's an old Cuba and a new Cuba in the world of Tekwar.
It's funny when they mentioned that. I was watching it. I thought, oh man, Luke's gonna love that.
Oh, I was so happy to find out more about this world.
So what do you think? What do you think happened? They split Cuba?
I think Florida's just now New Cuba.
Oh, well, that's a good possibility.
That's what I thought was happening.
Yeah, see, what I thought is they split it. So I don't know, the west part's old Cuba,
Like Ireland.
Yeah, exactly like Ireland.
Protestant Cuba and Catholic Cuba.
Yeah, that's how it's split.
Jake keeps roughing him up and like starts demanding information about Lambert from him. At which point, did you catch what this guy said?
No.
Jake's like, tell me about Lambert. And the guy's like, I gotta go to the bathroom. And he just tries to leave.
Did he really? Yeah. I don't even remember that.
It was great. Jake's like roughing him up and he's like, tell us about Lambert. And the guy's so nervous, which I loved so much. At any rate, at this point, Jake loses his mind and starts just like beating the crap out of him.
Yeah.
And the guy says, I know who you are. You're the mole, Jake. Everybody knows this. That's the word on the street. And Jake's like incensed by this, and Houston has to pull him off. It's a real ugly scene because basically since beginning of the episode, Jake has been looking very haggard, and he keeps getting more and more, even for Jake, like unhinged. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like where they're going with this.
Yeah, they're trying to make the audience think that maybe he is crazy and that's why he's been leaking things. Although, if you've been watching 18 episodes, no audience member is going to think he's actually guilty intentionally anyways.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens at this point. He goes back to see a psychiatrist. Before we get there, we see her talking to Lambert, and she says how the old plan of taking information is over because he's like, he has no new information. They're going to lock him out of it. So Lambert says, let's plant some ideas in his head. And then Jake walks in and she gives him this like ceramic finger holder.
That's the thing I thought looked like a Hulk hand or something.
Yeah,
it was
like,
very weird.
He puts his fingers in this blue ceramic thing, and then when he holds up to his head, a light comes on, and he gets real calm and relaxed.
I think it's like a migraine preventer or something.
I'm like, well, just give him that. He looks happy.
Yeah.
Jake, now that he's calmed down, he goes to the diner and he calls Slater in to meet with him because he's going to try to talk Slater, this security expert, into trusting him. I mean, Jake has no ability to talk to anyone, so it does not go well. This scene, though, does have some of the best background acting work in the entire show.
Oh, is that right?
Jake comes in, tries to reason with him. Slater tells him, think of me as Bascom's family doctor. I cleaned the cancer out of his organization. And Jake, like, flips his lid at that point. And they start getting in this huge fist fight. And there's one guy who's just, like, is standing, it can't be more than a foot away from them. Just, like, huge eyes, mouth wide open, like acting like the most surprised he's ever been in his life, like as these two fight. Jake beats Slater and then he walks away. We cut and Slater's leaving the diner. As he walks away, we cut to a close-up of a pulse gun getting shot. And Slater flies through the air.
Oh, yeah.
And he lands on the ground. And then this chubby guy eating a cookie walks up to Slater and gives the laziest line we've ever heard. He takes a bite of his cookie and he goes, "He's dead."
I know. I tell you, this is the most odd episode ever. It's as if the weird thing is, it's clearly, as you're saying, like Shatner directed it and his daughter wrote stuff, but it's as if everyone involved had never made another episode of Tekwar before. It's so weird. Everything's weird about it.
There are definitely a lot of choices made around background people that are insane in this episode. Like the people jumping up, the actors in the diner as the fight's happening, this guy eating a cookie who says this guy is dead. Although
it's all evidence of a crazy person making something and everyone just going, oh, okay, just do what he says.
Did you notice, because they kind of do that close-up of the gun when it gets shot. Yeah. And the implication is someone's setting up Jake. Mm-hmm. We never see who that might have been, and we know by this point that Jake's having stuff put in his mind. I think Jake actually killed him.
No, Jake says he didn't because he said the guy was killed with a
pulse gun or plasma gun.
And I threw mine into the lake, so I can't prove I didn't do it.
I actually think he killed him and then threw his own pulse gun or plasma gun into the river. And then maybe he can't remember exactly what happened because what they're doing to his mind. But like they never come back to that. No. I actually do think like they set it up as there would be a reveal later of who really killed him. I think Jake really killed him.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure.
They never come back to it. So my theory is as reasonable as anything.
Yeah, fair enough.
So at this point, this guy's dead. Jake's on the run. Bascom calls in Winger to like take over the case. He basically needs to get Jake arrested because he killed this Slater guy. Houston and Nika are furious that Bascom would ever blame Jake, which is silly because he did it. Winger shows up at this point, and Houston starts like yelling at him for like even thinking Jake could do this. Did you catch this Winger line? It was really good because Winger turns to Houston and says, "I have neither the time nor desire to train you in the fundamentals of logic."
Oh, that's right. I was like, oh, he's a Vulcan now? That's what he is? It's the funny thing about Winger is that he was super underutilized through this whole series. And they really did just write him like he was a Vulcan, like an annoying Vulcan you didn't want to have around, but he's a robot. But that line was pretty
he's
funny.
right. Houston should take a class on logic. Will help her be a better detective.
Well,
she's a bad detective.
Yeah, it is true.
And Nika also yells at Boscom, saying she can't believe he's more worried about his company at a time like this. I'm like, of course he's worried about his company. Yeah. Jake has been leaking information out of it, and he's a rogue agent.
They all should be worried about their company if they want jobs.
They should be very, very worried about the company. Jake goes back to see Dr. Blake. She tells him the word on the street from all her other ex-freezer people is that Bascom is framing Jake for something. I guess because Jake is losing his mind. She doesn't question that, but it's weird. Jake needs to tell Danny that he's innocent. That's the thing he needs to do. So he goes and hooks up with his old hacker friends, Cowgirl, and her sketchy partners back now.
Oh, yeah. Is this the original guy again?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
They don't want to help him because the Matrix police have wired the Matrix for sound.
Yeah, of course they have.
What does that mean?
Yeah, of course they have. Don't question it.
They've wired the Matrix for sound. But he offers them a bribe and they just say, okay. Yeah. Jake is even losing his mind. He still does what he does best.
Yeah, bribes.
They hollow in Danny. I guess it's like FaceTime in this world. You just hollow in somebody.
Yeah.
And he's just telling him he's innocent, at which point Winger just walks in and he's like, how did you know I was here? We knew you'd come here. I'm like, yeah, Jake, you're so obvious. They didn't even need to wire the Matrix for sound. They knew you would just show up here.
And Winger could not possibly move slower to try to stop him.
Well, that's it.
It's like he's old and rusty or something.
Jake has another vision at this point, or waking nightmare where his dad flickers in, and Jake jumps back because he's so afraid. This is what happens. He knocks over a cup of coffee.
It's probably a cup of soy.
A cup of soy latte.
Yeah.
It falls on a computer. The computer explodes.
Yeah, I know. And then he gets away.
And he runs away, and the cops don't chase him. Nobody tries it. This happens almost every episode. Someone gets away and no one puts up any effort to catch them. It's this is another one of their special tropes of Tekwar.
What a nice trope to have.
Get them to a point where they're almost caught because you need some tension, and then just kind of let him get away.
Let him get away because we got 20 more minutes to fill.
We got to fill a lot more time. Jake goes back to Dr. Blake. She puts him back in the nightmare machine. It's at this point though that she seems to be I guess this is where she's tweaking his memory.
Again, maybe I'm thinking too much about the details, but the connection they're making is that he's in therapy and she has told him that if he realizes his greatest fear, he'll be better. And so she supplants the thought that Bascom is this greatest fear. But what is the fear? The trust issue? That's because it doesn't quite. I'm like,
it just makes sense. The idea of facing your greatest fear and that his father might be his greatest fear makes sense. That's something you would have to confront and get over to maybe evolve as a person. Mm-hmm. In this, she tweaks his nightmare now. His father in the nightmare becomes Bascom, which I was like, okay. I mean, he's a father figure. That makes sense. But as soon as Jake comes out of it, he's like, I understand now. Bascom is my fear. I have to kill him.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And so my point is, did they sort of just poke him, hope he's going to go crazy and do something? Or is it they knew what he was going to do? Because that's a huge leap of logic to make.
The implication in this entire therapy is we're going to help you find your greatest fear so that you can kill it.
That's what I mean, right?
It does feel that was the plan all along. And so they had to put Bascom in so he wouldn't go kill his father.
Yeah, right.
I guess. I don't know. I'm going to just mention this briefly. This happens over a few scenes in the episode, but it's not worth going into separately. But there's a Danny Houston sequence.
Oh, yeah. Doesn't it seem, and let me cut you off and excuse me, but doesn't it seem like Danny and Houston are having an affair? The scenes are very intimate. And I was like, are they having an affair?
Well, Houston does show up at Danny's, I assume his dorm room at the school he's going to ask him where his dad is, and he won't rat his dad out. Did you notice though when she walks into his dorm room, he seems to be sitting at what kind of looks like a futuristic telescope?
I don't remember.
And I'm just is he just looking into other people's windows in this room?
Yeah, probably. Classic Danny, that little weaselly pervert.
But of course, Danny has a change of heart, and Houston shows up at the diner later because she got an anonymous tip to go to the diner. And this time it was Danny who gave them the anonymous tip. It's fucking insane, the amount of anonymous tips.
It's almost every episode.
Well, pretty much. At which point, Danny tells her all about the therapist and all this stuff, and Houston calls Nika and's like, look into this therapist for me, see what's going on, which was this great little sequence at the end of that thing where Nika calls her back and says, guess which popular criminal was her patient? To which Houston replies, don't tell me. And she just hangs up.
Yeah, because wouldn't it be funny if she was like, no, it was Rossi. It was Rossi. Don't get the other guy.
I mean, it seems like usually you're like, don't tell me. It's the guy we're looking for. You usually confirm the information. You don't just make the assumption. But yeah, she just hangs up the phone and doesn't ask any more questions. At this point, we kind of like race to the end of the episode. Houston goes and arrests Dr. Blake.
And she really assaults her too, huh?
Yeah, she gets really in her face and like warns, and Dr. Blake warns her that Jake's on his way to kill Bascom. We get a line of dialogue from Bascom saying, Winger's gone and arrested Lambert. I'm just like,
I know.
He's the big bad guy, and we're having him arrested off screen by another character.
So the interesting part of the episode of catching this guy is we never see any of it. So the bad guy who's doing this stuff, don't worry, that's all off camera. What we're more focused on is, Jake's not feeling too good. Well, that's what's interesting.
They didn't even know how to find him. So Winger obviously did way more work and tracked him down. Like, I don't understand. It was so weird that line is
I think we've said before, it'd be a better show if you're following Winger.
Oh, 100%. Bascom, now knowing that Jake is coming to kill him, gives everyone the day off.
Yeah.
Cosmo.
Yeah, and also they're like, Bascom, you should at least use a force field or something. And I was like, yeah, it makes sense. Like when that assassin woman came, he just had force field set up. So why wouldn't he do that as a safety measure against Jake? He's like, no, I need him to like trust me or whatever. It's like,
no, I know he hasn't turned off all security systems. And I thought the same thing. I'm like, just keep your personal force field on. It worked well last time.
Yeah, just in case.
But this is also that when Jake shows up, that Bascom can explain what has happened to him, what Dr. Blake and Lambert had done. And then he begs Jake for forgiveness for not trusting him and tells him he trusts him like a son and he should have never done this. And then Jake's just like, that's all it takes. Jake's like, okay, I guess I won't kill you now. We're good.
Where moments before he was just like a rabid murderer. Like it had to happen.
Yeah.
He drove all that way. He was still angry at the drive over. And then he got there and go, forget it.
He was irrationally angry, but all he wanted to hear was that he trusts him like a son and all is forgiven. At which point we get to a quick scene where Bascom and Jake are walking into the freezer to watch Lambert be put away forever.
Isn't it hilarious because he's just standing there naked?
He is just standing there naked. I love that Jake, on their way into the freezer room, is just like, I'll never do therapy again. That was stupid of me. I'm just like, that is not the
if he took the right lesson from that.
You need more therapy than ever now. Like, you should not be swearing off therapy at this exact moment. But my favorite thing is how it ends is this Lambert character basically getting into the freezer, threatening them both that he'll be back to get them. But he won't, because this show has no more episodes.
Yeah, that's it. And again, I said, what a stinker to end on. I think it's my least favorite episode.
All right, let's rate it.
I give it a 3.5.
3.5. I'm giving it a 6.
What? You're insane.
I had a great time with it.
Did you?
Episode.
I hated it.
I had a fun time myself. All right.
But did you like the episode?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't good by any means, but it was
all the terrible things that I hated that really angered me, you enjoyed them as stylistic choices.
I enjoyed them at least as comic moments.
Right.
So that means the overall series rating and the end of the day for Tekwar is 4.96.
That seems about right.
Would you recommend this series to anyone now that we've gone all the way through it? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I can discuss it with people, and sadly, everyone that has to work with me has had to hear me discuss this constantly, this show. But no, I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, the thing is, even as one of those sort of like guilty pleasures, like it's so cheesy, it's good or whatever, this show's not that. The show, more often than not, is boring and just kind of a placeholder. It's very rarely entertaining. Sometimes it's okay, and but they don't sort of own their cheesiness. They don't sort of work within the restrictions and barriers that they have to make the show. So you just end up with a kind of boring, pointless show. So no, I would not recommend it.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it either. The pieces of enjoyment are so few and far between. It's not worth digging into, really.
And the things I enjoy are not what they intended, like just a funny bit of special effects or something. That's the only entertaining bits.
Well, I mean, if the whole show was a bunch of bad choices, I would recommend it. Like I'd say, it was pretty funny to watch. But there's so few and far between.
Right.
Like you go so long with just nothing to find a spaghetti face moment. Like it's so hard.
So that's it. We spent hours and hours watching Tekwar.
And it's all over now. So what are we going to do next, Jordan? I think we're going to do a palate cleanser next, and we're going to watch a TV movie, right?
We're going to watch the Quester tapes.
Yes.
Is that it?
Yes, the Quester tapes will be the TV movie we'll watch. It'll just be a kind of a one-off episode since it's just TV movie. And we'll come back after that. I think we're going to get into a TV series, I believe, from the 70s.
Beyond Westworld?
Beyond Westworld.
I think it's actually 1980, but we could talk about that when we get to it in a couple weeks' time.
It sounds good to me. Thanks for listening to our whole series on Tekwar.
I was sure you were going to say horrible series of Tekwar, which both accurate.
You listened to all of it, and it was horrible. If you want to talk to us any more about Tekwar or about anything else, really, you can get us at Gmail at continuumdrag@gmail.com, on Instagram and Twitter at continuumdrag as well. And I think that wraps it up for our first sort of round of the show.
Yeah, thank goodness. Let's on to Quester tapes.
Couldn't be any worse.
Yeah, it couldn't be any worse. No.
Fantastic. Well, I'll see you next week, Jordan.
All right. Talk to you later.
Continuum Drag is recorded at Astrolab Studios in Toronto, Ontario. Theme music by James Rick-Siedler. Produced by Jordan Delick and Luke Black. Special thanks to Adam Wheatner, Jeff Hanley, Emily Carter, and Dwayne Wright.